Member Hilton. I wonder if you'd be willing to move for it to be seconded. And can I ask Member Robinson or Senator Senator Fraser? The minutes were circulated. Are you willing to second them, having been moved by Member Hilton? He's moved. Will you second Senator Fraser Binns? And seconded by Senator Fraser Binns, who has now joined us in the chamber. We're happy to see you, as usual. So the minutes are confirmed. Do we have any matters arising from the minutes?
The point was made about the importance of the Bankers Association joining us. I note that that was contemplated. They are not. I hope that we are able to procure their presence here.
Member Hilton, glad you raised that. Madam Clerk and myself just discussed that. We've moved it now twice. We're going to set it for January, but we're going to really say to them that's the last time. For 3 times, if we're not going to try and do it another time after that. We know everybody is busy. So Christmas is particularly busy, so we're going to move it to January. But that third movement is the last one. Senator Fraser-Binns.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm so happy that Member Hilton raised it, because when I saw the email communication yesterday, I pondered to myself, and I wondered, Chair, given the fact that given the reason that they have noted, if we could at least receive from them some comments, because I think given all the submissions that have been given so far, there is, in fact, a clear need to hear from the Jamaica Bankers Association, and they are so critical to the operation of this bill in so many ways that it would be really unfortunate if we could not hear from them. So, Chairman, I'm just proposing that at minimum we could ask them to submit something in writing. I heard the comments, but at least, I mean, I saw the notation in terms of getting the views from the different members within the group. But if we could at least get something in writing, I think that would be very useful.
The clerk confirms that, in fact, they have submitted something. They submitted something, but and out of that we invited them to speak. But I think you're absolutely no. It has been circulated, so It has not. I don't. It has been circulated. She said it was circulated. I think with the agricultural one it was, or maybe even before. But apart from that, I certainly am saying this now publicly, that we do want, like you, Senator Fraser-Binns, and of course from my own personal knowledge, we do want to hear from the Bankers Association, because we don't want to draft a bill and then we hear later on that it can't work, and we will say, but you were invited 3-4 times and you didn't come. So, Madam Clerk, I wanted to write a letter to the head of the Bankers Association to say the committee, the JSC, and certainly myself are requesting that they do appear before us so that we can draft a bill in which they have had input, because we do not want to draft one in which they have no input and then later on they say the bill doesn't work. So that's why we have a joint select committee. And yes, it's the Bankers Association. They do have the wherewithal to get here, and I'm asking them that they get here.
Excuse me, did you say that they made a submission? Could you circulate it again, because I have not seen it? Yeah, and Member Hilton also has not. So if you could circulate it, it would probably help us. Thanks.
Welcome, Senator Longmore. Good to see you. I mentioned that you would have been late. Thank you very much. We have just gone through the minutes and discussed the matter. Member Hilton raised the matter of the Bankers Association not being here this morning again. And we're going to, I've asked Madam Clerk to convey the strong sentiment of the JSC that the Bankers Association should pay their clients and our citizens the courtesy of appearing before us and saying really how we can make this bill better so it works for all of us, because they're an important part of making that, because the whole matter of taking security is really generally a banking issue first. Member Hilton, I think you want to make a comment.
Just to reaffirm and echo, and I'd ask that apart from the writing, Minister, that you appeal directly with the President of the bank.
Yes, just ask Ms. Jonas to have me call the President of the Bankers Association. That's something I'm very happy to do and convey to them the importance that this is. I'd be very happy to do that.
It's critical.
It is critical for them to be appearing before us.
Their non-appearance in this committee sends all kinds of miscues, possibly.
That's
and
right.
We wouldn't wish that to be the
To
case.
happen again,
So,
yes.
So we really
I'll convey to the President.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. And now we have the pleasure of having Mrs. Janet Pullen from the Jamaica Agricultural Society to make a submission to the committee. Ms. Pullen, thank you for coming. And if you press your button, I'll make sure you can speak. The middle button, the middle part of the microphone. It's okay there, we'll sort it out. Now you can speak.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairman.
Make sure you speak in the mic though, because they want to record you upstairs.
Okay, great. I am here representing Mr. Leonard Fulton, President of the Jamaica Agriculture Society, and also as an individual who's also a farmer and a wife of a farmer, and who have personal issues from time to time likewise. However, we're looking at the whole matter, and in principle, the Jamaica Agriculture Society, and I wish to say, is a membership organization. And what that means is that we represent people who willingly becomes a part of the Jamaica Agriculture Society by joining in, by paying a membership fee. The RADA, on the other hand, represents all farmers in Jamaica. They are the government arm, and they represent everybody. But as I sit here this morning, two things come to mind. In principle, we are in agreement with the Act. In principle. However, I would love for us to recognize that when it comes on to the whole matter of security, it becomes very gender biased, especially when it comes on to our women. And so we're looking at security, and we're looking at all different types of security, but we want to ensure that when our women are faced with issues of securing loans in whatever sense.
Is that why they sent you this morning? I said the President has designated. Well, go ahead, ma'am. Go ahead, Ms. Pullen.
Because, and I'll be very honest with you, the women in the agriculture sector plays a significant role.
I'm from Southfield, St. Elizabeth. Yes. I can attest to what you're saying to be absolutely so.
Yes.
Women play a very vital role.
And apart from everything else, I'll be very honest with you, every lending institution who really wants to get their money paid back and get back their money, ensure that there's a woman behind there somewhere. But the truest sense is that they are the backbone of a community. They are, and in many cases, irrespective of what it looks like, a lot of our women choose to remain in rural Jamaica. And they are not because they're uneducated or anything, they choose to be there. Some are very educated, and they've chosen to grow their children, raise their children in the community, and help in the whole aspect of community development. So they're, and many times they're what you call the community lawyers, so they are educated, they know what is happening, and they give advice to the community. And when it comes on to security, let us all look at what it is that a woman or a farmer, let's start with the farmer first, the farmer takes to the bank in terms of securing a loan. It is one of the most high-risk sector. If there's any degree of breeze, the bananas are gone. And in many cases, they do not have a second income. The income, the ability to have another job is rare in their children. So they're doing the business, but the other time that they have is really to take care of the family. So they can't go there and have another job. Recently, with the advent of COVID and the whole matter of government doing so much to expose and to open rural communities so that you have internet and so on, has given them some chance of doing some online jobs. But in the truest sense, there's two jobs, the farm and the family. And so similar to a dressmaker being able to go to the bank and say to them, come and look at my industrial machines and take them as security. Let us look, therefore, at the woman who, on her farm, she might have one.
Sorry to interrupt. Chairman? Could you
Yes,
just
Member
ask,
Robinson.
the GS rep to speak closer to the mic? When she's not speaking in the mic, I can't hear her at all, but when
Yeah,
she
if
speaks
you
closer
move
to the
around,
mic,
you
I
need
can
to
hear her
speak
clearly.
directly into the mic.
Thank you.
My apologies.
All right, now you're very clear. If you stay in that general vicinity, you'll be all right.
Okay, thank you. When the dressmaker or the hairdresser goes to the bank, they're able to take their equipment and they put a value to it. For many, many years, I, as a trainer and as a marketing officer within the Jamaica Agriculture Society, we have always trained our farmers to look at what they have and to quantify it, to monetize it, and use it when you go to the bank. So for example, if you have 100 cedar tree, it might not be in the same location, but you own it. 100 cedar tree is almost an acre of not pure stand, because pure stand might be a little bit more, but if you're using 80 plants to the acre, that's 1 acre of cedar tree. 10 to 15 years after, each of those cedar tree is valued almost 300,000 each. Now you might say, but the person wants the money now. But the truth is, they might not have any other security. So when we're talking about security, let us look at what is available, what is able to be monetized and to be quantified. Quite recently, I was speaking to the people with spices, and they're looking for people with large span of lands, 80 acres and 100 acres, and I say to them, so what happened to the small farmer who would just have half acre or an acre? It should not be a deterrent, because if you have 200 small farmers, each planting 25 pimento trees, and you're saying this is 80 trees to the acre, let's multiply that 25 by 200, and then instead of saying X, Y, and Z, you're able to say 10 acres of pimento tree was established for the period, giving a projection that in 7 years, this is how much we're expecting to reap from that. And so I would love, and the JAS would love to see that the whole matter of security is looked at in that same direction, because that's the only way until and I must commend government again for the whole matter of
No, you can do that all 3 times now. This committee will allow you to do that. I see Member Hilton is raising his hand, but I'm not going to turn on his mic. So you can.
but Minister
Go ahead,
Hilton,
Ms. Cullen, yes.
Member Parliament Hilton was also very active in St. Thomas. And at the time when I was parish, I don't know if he remembers me, but I was parish manager in St. Thomas at the time, and there was a vibrant land titling that was going, and it has continued. So there has been an increase in the amount of land titles that are out there. Unfortunately, the amount of titles that the women are getting is not moving as fast as we would hope, for various reasons. But then what we would like to see a more robust empowerment of our women, giving them the opportunity to access funding to go to the next level using what is available.
Continue. How would you want to see the Joint Select Committee recognize in a gender sense what we're trying to do here to make sure that the property, the assets that people own that are not generally considered right at the front of mind, like a car or a house or even a piece of land, as asset. How would you suggest, with all that experience that you clearly obviously have, how would you suggest that those legal eagles beside you and behind you who frame the law would get that into a piece of legislation?
First and foremost, we at the JAS does have a concern with regards to the amount of funds that someone applies for and what is used as collateral for the funds. It is very difficult, and I'll be very honest with you, that somebody who is applying for $1.5 million or $2 million with a house to use their home, especially the fact that it is such a vulnerable and high-risk entity to use their home as security. When they have no children, when they have no husband, and it's them and their children. I'll be very vocal on that one. The home is important for their children and for themselves. So for us, we are looking at what else can we use. For anything over a certain amount of money, I agree. Home might come in, a house might come in as important asset. But anything up to $2 million, I really would not, from the JS point of view, would not like to see that two-bedroom house be placed on the block as security.
Yes, and while I bring in Senator Fraser-Pryns, think about what then would you be suggesting that a prospective lender should use as security for your constituents that you talk about. But let me bring in Senator Fraser-Pryns at this time.
Chairman, if, with your permission, I have about 3 questions for the rep from JAS. Could you just remind me what is the total membership of your organization?
My organization, at this time, we have 183,000 persons. And let me explain how we get 183,000. The Jamaica Agriculture Society gave birth to almost all associations. So, and those associations are members of the JAS. So, for example, Jamaica 4-H Club is the child. It originated as the youth arm of the Jamaica Agriculture Society. So the Jamaica 4-H Club is a member of the Jamaica Agriculture Society. The Coconut Board of Jamaica came also out of the Jamaica Agriculture Society, and they are a member of the Jamaica Agriculture Society. When JLA, Jamaica Livestock Association, started, it started out of the Jamaica Agriculture Society. So all of its adjoining members, so the breed societies and so on, are all members of the Jamaica Agriculture Society. Coupled with that, we have individual groups, and they come through formation of branches within the communities, within the various parishes.
Right.
And so that's how the complete arrangement of membership is quantified in the JAS.
Okay, thanks. And if you can't, it's okay, but are you able to tell me what is the number of individual membership?
The individual membership at this time
Yes.
is 62,000.
62, okay. All right. I am very happy that you started from the position of accepting that the sector is a very vulnerable sector. Because in my own mind, I believe that one of the challenges to the utilization, just based on the different presentations that you've had, has to do with the sector in and of itself being so vulnerable.
You'll always remember that day you became a parent. That day, you made yourself a promise to provide for them, to protect them, laugh with them, watch them learn, and let them grow. That day, you realized your biggest challenge lies in bringing them up in a world full of choices. That day, you knew they would grow up fast, and the innocence you cherish wouldn't last. That day, you made up your mind that no matter how things change, you would always take the time to give them parental guidance. That day is today.
Remember, parental controls are available for all devices. A reminder from the Broadcasting Commission.
Let's be clear. Tobacco use is associated with several cancers, lung and heart-related diseases. Smoking harms nearly every organ in the human body and contributes to impotence, impaired vision, bad breath, discolored fingernails, and teeth. E-cigarettes, e-cigs, or electronic nicotine delivery systems, ENDS, can be just as harmful. Many of the e-liquids in e-cigarettes contain nicotine, which is addictive and toxic. Nicotine use can also disrupt adolescent brain development. Early use of e-cigarettes also increases the likelihood of tobacco addiction in later years and can result in a graduation to even more dangerous substances. Besides nicotine, some e-cigarettes contain other harmful substances, including heavy metals like lead, volatile organic compounds, cancer-causing chemicals, and tiny particles that penetrate deep into the lungs. E-cigs, whether they contain nicotine or not, can also cause injuries from fires and explosions from batteries. Children and adults have been poisoned by swallowing, breathing, or absorbing e-cigarette liquid through their skin or eyes. The proposed Tobacco Control Act seeks to protect Jamaica's youth from use and exposure to tobacco smoke, nicotine, and other harmful substances. Let us give the next generation a chance to live and breathe easily. I am Denise Bingham, and I'm from the National Council on Drug Abuse.
Bruises are much worse. You have to report him. Yeah, but if I go to the police station, they're just going to see it as another man and woman fighting.
Victims of domestic abuse can get help through the Domestic Violence Intervention Centers. Let me show you how to find one of these centers. Open the browser on your smartphone and type in jcf.gov.jm. When the page loads, scroll down to Resources and click on Domestic Violence Intervention Centers. This will give you a full listing of all the centers with their contact information. Or just walk into any police station and ask them to direct you to the nearest Domestic Violence Intervention Center where you can speak to a police officer.
A message from the European Union United Nations Spotlight Initiative in partnership with the Government of Jamaica.
Jamaica and its workforce are advancing quickly. Life-changing opportunities are arising. You need training and support. We are the Renewed Heart NSTA Trust, committed to providing new and emerging skills training and opportunities. Come to Heart. We'll help you claim your place in the workforce of the future.
Introducing the new $2,000 note. The new $2,000 note was created to help bridge the gap between the $1,000 and $5,000 notes. With the introduction of the $2,000 note, alongside the $1,000 and $5,000 notes, fewer notes will be required to settle transactions. For example, instead of using 4 $1,000 notes to settle a transaction of $4,000, an individual could use just 2 notes, a combination of 2 of the new $2,000 notes. This substitution effect will lead to less reliance on the heavily demanded $1,000 bill, as well as generate cost savings for the bank over time.
Then of JAS would be the offering of some type of insurance for members. That's one. And secondly, whether JAS has gotten any complaints or have any thought as to whether there is any challenge in procuring crop insurance by members. So that's the first one. Secondly, last week we had the Jamaica Intellectual Property Organization, JAPO, making a presentation to us. And one of the things they spoke about was in terms of the uptake by lending institution has to do with valuation. Intellectual property, they mentioned, and I'm paraphrasing, is not something that comes readily to mind as a collateral. And for those who would consider using it, one of the challenges has to do with how do you value somebody's music? How do you value somebody's artistic work, whether it is drawing or the performing arts? How do you put a value on that? And linking that to the agricultural sector, I wondered whether there were any challenges within the sector in terms of valuation. You mentioned about the cedar tree, but is that a scientific valuation? Is that something that comes by rote because you are a practitioner in the area? So I want you to talk a little bit about valuation. Thirdly, what, if any, are your thoughts on the financial or the lending institutions and members in the agricultural sector who wants to get a loan using their crop as collateral, because the thing about the act that we're looking at is it understands that, as the concern you raised, not everybody have a house, and those who have a house may not want to use it as collateral. So what the act envision is that you can use anything you have, whether it's your microwave, whether it's your stove, whether it's your crop, as a collateral to get money for your business. So I want to know what has been the review, or what is a review of your organization in terms of lending institutions making available loans for members under this act using non-real property. In other words, not using house and land, but using crops. And I'll come back for the other one.
Okay. Can I answer? Sure. Okay. So let's start right away with crops. We recognize that it is probably one of the easiest way of providing collateral. But let us look at the type of crops that we're talking about that is easy to access and easy to quantify and easy for you to reclaim and to gather your payments. So let's look at the milk industry. Milk cannot be taken in a churn and taken to the market to be sold. It has to go to the milk in the condensary. So right away, a farmer who is a livestock farmer, cattle farmer, a milk farmer, would be able, based on the number of milking herd, the number of milking animals within that herd, and the milking animals can be goats, can be cows, whatever. He is selling to a condensary, and he or she is selling to a condensary. When the milk goes to the condensary or the lending institution must be in collaboration with whoever that entity is. And so an arrangement can then be made that for every churn of whatever is given to them, their money is withdrawn, and then the remainder goes to the farmer. So right away, there is a clear path for the collection of the funds that is going to be the repayment process. The same thing goes with not just milk, but it also goes with coffee. The coffee, it cannot be sold in the market on its own like that. So they're picking coffee, it's going to the factory. The factory must have that sort of relationship, or the lending institution create that relationship and that pathway, so that that farmer, when his copy is sent to the factory, is able to withdraw the amount of funds or whatever. What is going to be necessary in all of that is the level of collaboration between lending institutions and all these coffee factories. What do I mean by that? I mean that the minute NCB, and I just use NCB, no pun, Minister.
The major shareholder owns a major coffee producing entity here in Jamaica.
So what you'll find happening, the minute that lending institution approves a loan, that person's name must come up on that database among all the coffee factories in Jamaica.
Examples you're giving, and it speaks a lot to procedure. But what I want to find out from you is, based on what you're saying, what is the view of your members in terms of being able to access the loan? So the coffee farmer or the dairy farmer goes to a financial institution and said, listen, I have 500 herd of cows and I want to borrow $1 million. When they come back to you to share their experience, what do they say? Do they say that the process was easy? Do they say to you that, boy, the financial institution don't want to use my cow, or they don't want to use my corn? What do they say? I want to find out what has the experience been.
Yes, sir.
Currently,
yes.
The lending institution, very few will accept their cows as collateral. And I'll tell you, and it is sad to say this, but it is true. these small lending institution that is giving the loans at how much percent per week are more readily, they're easy to get. There was a lady, she was from Red Hills community, hard worker. She was a vegetable producer. And every crop period she wants $30,000 or $40,000 to start up. Her husband was sick, but you know that you're going to see Miss Pino come down when it comes around to planting. She needs 40 or 50,000. And she couldn't go into the commercial bank where she lodged her money because she didn't have anything. So she went down on Orange Street here, not calling any name, but there was a little lending institution across there. And I just went up there one day and I said, listen, can you help her? And they said, can you write a proposal for her? And I said, yes, I'll do it. And I went back to my office and I wrote a proposal and I sent it up. They gave her the money the Friday after I spoke to them the Tuesday. The lending institution.
The non-bank lending institution.
The non-bank, right. And they gave her that money the Friday. She went, she did her stuff, plant, everything. They gave her time before she started paying back. Because remember now, in their system, you pay back every week. But she could not pay back every week. She needed 12 weeks before her string beans start coming in. But because she's such a prudent old lady, although she wasn't able to reap until 12 weeks, she would come down and carry down her 2,000 and 3,000 and say, put it on my account. For the past 4 or 5 years, she don't bother talk about no other bank. She said, Miss P, listen, it is a little higher, but the minute I call her and them say, oh, Miss Spinner, I know, all right, come down. The first day she did that application and she created a history with them, she didn't even have to go back to redo anything. She just go there and sign a paper, she get her money and she go. And she moved from 50,000 to 100,000. And even when that lady died in COVID, she was owing them and her children came in and cleared her loan because their mother's name must remain impeccable.
You know, I'm glad you bring that issue up because what you've just outlined is how do you handle risk? Because, and this is why we have people like JBDC, because what helped that lady is Miss Pullen's knowledge to do a relatively simple proposal. It's not, 5 years projections and da-da-da-da-da that the bank will tell you that they want. But she gave a good proposal. They could understand the lady's business, and they were willing to take a risk. And for that, they charged somewhat more. And look at the time scale that they did. They didn't have to go to 5 board meetings, and 3 months later, when the string beans should have been planted and reaped, she still can't get any money. So exactly. There is a role for that, but we would like to see bankers talking to Ms. Pullen, who have this kind of experience, which is why we want the bankers here. And I would wish Ms. Pullen would come back when they come. So when they say what they have to say, you can say, but this is my experience. So we want the bankers to understand, because we've gone through a period where for a long time in the 90s, bankers didn't lend to operating companies and manufacturing companies. They bought government paper. The government was willing to pay them lots of money on interest, and they tell you, investors tell you right up front, why should I put my money to risk when I can get riskless money in government bonds? Those times have passed. We're now at a place where bankers must go out and look at new business. And part of new business is really, we have 425,000 SMEs that we know of through JBDC at the ministry. So we know that there's business out there, but bankers have to take a different approach and begin to understand how businesses run. For instance, it's very hard. Bankers won't tell you. They want to pay half their interest paid every month. Well, Miss Dulce from the string bean lady that Miss Pullen just talked about can't pay you every month. She's going to need 3 months to grow her string beans and start to reap them and put them back in the market. But if you're going to be tied on to something that they teach you in school, that you must get your interest paid every month, you're not going to get anywhere. And in farming, you have to understand that you're dealing with seasons and weather and all those issues that come in. And where we can, we look for mother farmers, like in the chicken business and some other business. We want to see mother farmers who step in and provide the working capital for smaller farmers. But banks and financial institutions must now step up to the plate, and clearly the non-bank ones who take, and you know, people say the interest rate are high. The loss is quite often high because when a farmer loses his or her crop because of flood or drought, there is no working capital available to pay. That's where they must work with insurance companies. And banks now have own insurance companies. But it looks like you want to speak, Senator Fraser-Bin. So, Member Hilton first. He's in deep thought there, you know. He's weighing grease in philosophy. Member Hilton, come back to us.
No, I'm very, very much
here
with the conversation. But my question, as we kept talking and discussing, there's been movement. In fact, at one point, the questions that I had was asked. But I think this whole exercise, if it's going to be meaningful in terms of amendments to the existing legislation, I think at the bottom of all of this, of course, is the whole matter of risk and risk attenuation.
How do you deal with it? How do you deal with risk?
Yeah, and how to address this. And we knew that because when we started down this road, the whole issue was about, and there's a reason why banks love real estate, because they're movable and they're there. So there's a reason why they've been wedded to that approach. Now, to move away from that to movable assets.
Or growing assets.
Growing assets. Involves necessarily a different category of risks to these institutions. So, one of the obvious responses, insurance, because their business is to insurable risks. However, as we have seen with insurance companies generally, and in the face of climate change and the impacts,
and COVID and long supply chains and all those things.
Yeah, in the context of increased risks, a number of insurance companies are withdrawing.
Oh, absolutely. And the reinsurance companies are totally withdrawing.
From regions like ours that suffer the kind of losses we do over time. So the point I'm raising for consideration for the committee to have on the table is, one, I take the point about women in agriculture. And it seems to me that as a matter of broad policy, that if we recognize that subset of our population, women, and women in agriculture in this instance, are at particular disadvantage for historical and other reasons. And if we decide that, like, persons with disabilities and other vulnerable groups in our society. That as a matter of policy, we want to address the particular issue. Again, women in agriculture, in this instance. Then it seems to me, Chairman, that we have to put on the table for consideration a much wider set of responses to the challenges rather than narrowing it, one, solely to the banks. The banks have their own constraints as per the BOJ and whatever other policy.
Yeah, interest has to be calculated at a certain time according to the regulators, and yeah, you don't want to be outside of that line.
So I'm saying, so you have that bucket of issues, the banking sector. You have the issues with the insurance sector, and yet the issue is a real one for the society and economy. It seems to me we have to go further, and we have to put on the table now what sort of innovation we can bring to the table to look at this. And it seems to me that government, as a matter, this is broad policy, government can't withdraw from that discussion. It's not just to set the policy, but to help to find the solution. I don't have the answer right now, to be honest. But I'm just saying, as we look at this question, because at the heart of this, if the legislation is going to be useful, and this is why the review was thought necessary, we wanted to get the historical impact from the users. If it's going to be useful, then we're going to have to find some solution to make this legislation workable. And valuation is one of them, to be sure. But the question of risks and how that is mitigated, right, are attenuated is a part of the resolution that we have to put our minds to see how we deal with that.
There are two parts that I divide your comments in, Member Hilton. The issue of risk, and in that discussion, maybe not your words, but this is what the meaning I got. We have to go deeper in the lending sector. We can't just stop at the banks because we know the limitations that they have and the mindset which they have carried for how many decades. The second part is where you deal with how does the government, if anything, look at de-risking, not just policy. So let me go back to the first part. The first part, Madam Clerk, I'd love you to find if the non-bank sector, usually the group of lenders who, the non-bank financing institutions that lend, they tend to lend at a higher rate, but they tend to lend much more speedily, as Ms. Pullen outlined in that example she gave us. If we can get them, if they have an association, or get the bigger ones, and since we're talking about, this is government, this is Parliament, you have Access, you have Chris and Charles and others, if you can get one or two of them, not just the Access and Chris and Charles, because they're the bigger ones, but even in that sector, go lower to the one that's on, Ms. Pullen can tell the one in Orange Street or wherever she went, that is not that name, but get two or three of them to come. If they can join together and make one submission, be great. But if they want to make individual submissions, we're asking them to appear before us, because this is where their business is, and with the people who are in the risk business, and that's not just the bank, because they don't seem to understand small risk, but certainly the non-bank sector. And mine is just a caution that we have to be careful that we don't get involved in that lending. But you want to respond, Member Hilton. Please go ahead.
My point was, to be clear, to be
Yes.
precise, what we have to do is we have to build out an ecosystem that addresses the range of issues that are being thrown up in these discussions. If this particular piece of legislation, the SIPA, is to make its contribution, there's an ecosystem that seeks to address the de-risking, as we've discussed, put on the table, of the entire sector. And therefore, the players, the range of players to be brought in is what I was talking about. So it can't be just a bank, it can't be. And yes, you're correct. This particular committee and the hearing has to be creative in exercising its authority and its reach. So as you said,
Invite them in,
bring them in,
and hear from them publicly.
Yes,
because you know what? For the most part, Parliament and government doesn't look at those people. Yeah. And they play a vital part, as Ms. Pullen just outlined. And I want to invite them in by name and invite them into, if they can come collectively, would be good, but if they want to come individually, be happy to have them. Senator Longbourn.
That's why we started by saying this morning, I don't see how we can end this proceeding without the bankers appearing.
The non-bankers?
No. The bankers.
Oh, the JBA for one. Yes. We want them in,
yes.
And then the others.
And the others, yes.
Okay. I agree with that, member. But Senator Longbourn has been very patient. I'm going to bring her in. Push on back your button so I can make you on. Right.
Thank you. I'm mindful of the time, and I'm not sure if Ms. Pullen had completed her presentation.
There was just one other area that I really wanted to touch on, and that was the area where are we going to look at the PC banks and their current function? DBJ as another issue. Mm-hmm. And I say that because of also the response that we get from our members. PC Bank sent me to school. PC Bank sent me to university.
A whole heap of Jamaicans.
My mother. It's a family thing. Mount Carey PC Bank in the parish of St. James. Mr. Clark, who died a couple years ago.
Oliver Clark.
That was the farmer's bank. And 90% of all persons who access those loans, they use their crops. It was crop lean at the time. When you... Yes.
Yeah, man, long before.
Yes.
Long before.
But what I'm saying here is that when you go, I have had experience going to the PC Bank, Minister, and when you go into the PC Bank, you don't know if it's a commercial bank you're in, or everything is going on in there except in the farmer's business. Mm-hmm. Everything is going on in there, and even when you go to speak to the manager, and you say, let's look at a crop like pumpkin. I said, you want to plant an acre of pumpkin. How much money are you going to need? I'm going to need $480,000 based on cost of production. And then they give you a whole lot of story why you can't get $480,000. And it is the people. Mm-hmm. And what you find happening, remember, it's a membership. So even the farmers are no longer becoming members anymore in the PC Bank because they're not feeling the impact that it had years ago. So we need to revisit that. And then the whole matter of DBJ. When DBJ lend these monies out there, how is it that the farmer really can access those funds? You go to DBJ and they spend millions of dollars doing all sorts of things trying to prepare. And in truth, they're trying to prepare the farmer to go access these funds. But when they go elsewhere, they're not accessing the funds. It is the last option. But there was something that was very important that I need to share with you, and that's an experience. In the parish of St. Catherine, when I was parish manager, I was very fortunate. I worked on both sides of the aisles. I had member of parliament from both sides.
Speak in the mic, though, because...
And we have an excellent relationship.
Speak in the mic, because I want the member of parliament online to hear you.
And we had an excellent relationship. Here is what happened. As a trainer, I do not go out there and give my farmers anything without training. And I went to a member of parliament and I said, listen, I'm going to train X amount of farmers in poultry management, in the truest sense. But when I train them, what do I have to give them? How can we take them to the next level? And we deliberated. And he said to me, I can find $2 million. If I give the PC Bank the $2 million as collateral to assist a number of the farmers, to get, and they just wanted small things, you know,
Small amount of money.
just to go and buy the 100 or 200 chicken, 20 bags of feed. That is going to take them up to 8 weeks, 6 weeks for production, and 2 weeks to kill,
That's right.
clean out, and whatever, and restock, and pay back. Huh? And let me tell you, I'm not going to tell you who that person was, but up to today, that $2 million fund is still turning over. No, it's been going on over 10 years. It's been going on over 10 years.
All right, go ahead, finish. Are you finished?
And these are some of the things that we really have to start looking at. The small farmers who really need the small money to keep it going. And let's not anybody fool us. The small farmers play significant. It's not the law. They are important, but they have their money, and they have the land title, and they have the know it, and they can go and get the official project proposals and so on, and going to see them. We're talking about the small man who really just need 50,000. 100 chicken is for what, $20 per bird, to $20,000, whatever, and a bag of feed now is like 2,000 something. 8 bags of feed per 100 birds, 6 weeks, and then to pay somebody to help them with it. They don't want much. They really don't want much. The problem sometimes what they have is when they're done, they have to go trust the chicken and wait until the money come in to start. And that is the problem. They don't want that lull time. Mm-hmm. They want to be able to clean out and go back. So if you can have a system for them, because they will pay, you know. I have absolutely no doubt that our farmers will pay. It's just that the timing of the payment is important for them.
All right, I need to say something here, Senator Longmore, before I bring you back in. I'm glad you asked Ms. Pullen to elaborate here, because this is a vital part. I was involved in the merging of the DBJ and the Investment Bank of Jamaica. I know a thing or two about it. I have my views in it. I'm not going to give those views here today. We tend to say DBJ, and the whole word of development is dropped. When you say DBJ, you can't hear development. You hear DBJ. DBJ could be like NCB or anything else. DBJ does not lend directly to small entities. They unlend through financial institutions. I ran the biggest one here. We had deposits, the biggest deposits in Jamaica, probably still do at NZB, and very often DBJ's money at a price was more expensive than the money I could get in my current account deposits. So which money do you think I'm going to use? That's the one we used. So, so you have that issue. The PC Bank has, let's just say it's in a place that is difficult. And in fact, DBJ now has what I would call administrative responsibility, if I remember correctly. So it would be good, I am going to ask the clerk to invite DBJ by name and the head of the PC Bank to come together, because it doesn't make sense for the PC Bank to talk without DBJ, because DBJ is the administrator. And we need to find out from them, and this is why we have a joint select committee. Things that, and Member Hilton especially, now this is where the government would have a say through its lending institution, DBJ, and the PC banks. Because many of us from the country remember how the PC Bank has been helpful to our families. My father used the PC Bank. I remember that very well, the one in Southfield, but I don't even know if it exists to help anybody more in Southfield. I have to check. I go back, but I don't go to the PC Bank anymore. I hear what you're saying, and you're absolutely right. And Member Hilton, this is where now, as we make the policy, the government institutions that are involved at the big level, like DBJ is, and the smaller level, like the PC Bank should be asked to tell us how best we can structure this to make it work, help them to help make it work for us. So I'm going to ask the clerk to invite the DBJ and the head of the PC Bank to this meeting in January, and I look forward for that to happen. And I'm going to know, because she's been so gracious, go right back to Senator Longmore to ask her to continue. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister, and thank you, Ms. Bullen, for your thorough and thought-provoking, experienced contribution. It is always welcomed when someone who is off the field can relate to the specific issues that we are trying to unravel. And so, you know, I will identify as being off the field. I have my farm. Let me tell you, one of my life's ambitions, at times I contemplated leaving everything and just go on my farm, honestly, because that is where it is wholesome. There's a reason people gravitate towards this. There's a reason, as you said, why, especially in our rural communities, people choose to do that rather than pursuing a dollar somewhere else. Mm-hmm. Because there is also a therapeutic benefit. There is significant health benefit to farming. Right. Not just on the physical level, but on the mental level, of course. And there is a reason why people will go through and push through the struggles there when they wouldn't elsewhere, because there's a therapeutic value to it. And Member Hilton, I jotted it down and you glanced on it with respect to not just the gender focus, but more so at-risk populations. We're seeing where persons, not just with disabilities of the physical nature, but persons, farming is a very mental health-oriented therapeutic space. Mm-hmm. And more interventions for at-risk youth, as part of like juvenile rehabilitation units, farming is being incorporated. Mm-hmm. But also within the formal education system. So there is huge potential, and I mean, however the incentives can be had, I am 100% behind. But I wanted to just focus on one or two things when we talk about, and I pulled up the ILO website, and one of the new avenues that we're going into when we look at issues this came out especially out of COVID, with respect to gender and vulnerable populations, is what we call the care economy. The care economy is where there's exploration of securities and equity for individuals who provide care in a society. So persons who take care of the elderly, persons who stay home and care for kids, persons who see to the caring of persons who are not normally recognized in a financial way. And that is the direction, and I will share this if you're interested in it. The UN Women actually put out an ILO policy tool a guide to public investments in the care economy. And it is something that I would be curious for a mind like yours to probably reflect on, to see how, and especially those persons, as Chairman has indicated, from the DBJ, the PC Bank, as to how we can seek to provide securities for these persons who are in our rural community, who provide this level of care, who oftentimes are at risk for their own economic development. And this is the direction. Member Hilton, you okay? Yeah, this is the direction that, in terms of securing what previously was not securable, if there's a word such as such, right? That we can seek to incorporate that within this piece of legislation. The other thing that I would want to expand on too is, and Member Hilton tipped on it again, in terms of how else, I was here sitting and thinking, how else the vulnerability of farmers is especially the insecurities of their crops. And what we have is a cyclical situation. Sometimes you have surplus. Sometimes you have excess. I know that there's a facility in St. Elizabeth, I can't remember the exact community, where they're now having a plant that is transforming and making flour from ground provisions. So the yam flour, the sweet potato flour, the breadfruit flour. Is there a way we could devise for processing and cold storage of excesses? I know that it is where farmers, when they have these excesses, this could be a way to provide that sense of security. It's like a bank of sorts, but not a financial bank, but food bank tying into our food security. I am putting these on the table here because we have to think of ways to provide what is usually not able to be provided for our farmers. And the vulnerability of the space is one where, even though it is not big monies for the rest of us, as we know, or we might know, or might be aware of, if we're able to provide compensation in those times of excesses that can be used as future security, especially like what you said in the lull periods, when they're between crops and they don't get the payment for something, but they need to prepare for the next crop, if that could be somehow channeled, that it is the excesses are processed or stored and or basically sold to a bank, a food bank, that provides that level of security, that provides that level of storage. Those foods that are dehydrated, I mean, can you imagine sugarloaf pineapple dehydrated? It's a great snack for our kids. Channel that into our food or feeding programs. So I would love, Chairman, and it is really very disheartening. And I mean, I'm just hoping that it's some matter why the Bankers Association is not here as yet. Because this is where the strategies need to come from, along with the PC Bank and DBJ, as you said. How can we innovate to provide these flexible solutions to our most vulnerable populations?
I want to make an interjection here because, Senator Longmore, the issue that you raised about the food bank and storage is something that on my business missions that I've taken between 35 and 73 people on business missions across the Caribbean and America and Europe, I constantly put out the investment possibility. And this is how I put it. John Pro is with me and some people from the ministry. If you look from St. Catherine, and Ms. Pullen can probably back me up on that because she's on the road all the time. If you look from St. Catherine to, say, Negril, you can find two very well established, in other words, well built, well organized, well run cold storage facilities. And that entire section is where we grow a lot of our perishables, or vegetables, or pineapples. Pineapples might be on the North Coast somewhere else. But we don't have storage areas. It's an area for investment, not necessarily by a farmer. A businessman, a businesswoman say, look, we want farmers to have desiccated pineapple. I almost said desecrated, but you know what I mean. Desiccated pineapple and desiccated mango and whatever else we want them to have, because mango juice is actually, except possibly for orange juice, mango juice is part of every other mixed juice that you have. And we have mangoes wasting every year from May to, say, July, and your cars drive over it, even on the streets. And we have no place where we are getting those mangoes, processing them, agro-processing them, storing them, because the tourists come in December to March, but the mangoes come in May to June. So you're not going to have the mangoes if you're going to have, say, you're not going to store them. So here is a business, and I'm glad that this is probably streamed somewhere, because I say it overseas, I say it locally in my speeches. We need investors to go in so that farmers are not going to put up a storage. Ms. Pullen tells you that they can hardly get 50,000 sometimes. But business people can put up those, and it's a good business to store products and process them often, so that there's a business that we have to get the agro-processing business going. You go to Domrep, and it's amazing what they do with their agro-processing. So we need to get our local business people who have money and investors, and there's a lot of money in Jamaica. The government has been out of the capital market for years, so there's money there. So we need to have investors investing in this to make what you're suggesting right, and it's a business all by itself.
There's possible a role for RADA and other agencies to whether regulate, whether to institute. The point that I'm trying to get
enable and facilitate.
Facilitate,
Don't
yes.
so much regulate.
Exactly.
Go facilitate and enable.
Yes, most definitely.
No, regulation might be needed, but you don't start off with regulation,
No.
so nothing happens. Yeah. But we tend to regulate, over-regulate before we even establish.
The critical thing, Chair, is that these more and more we're recognizing the value of food and the foods that we consume to our health. And we are significantly wasting the potential while we're dealing with heart disease and diabetes and stuff on one end of the scale. We're having agents that could be used in the significant prevention of those. Our schools need it. Our population need it. And if you can create popsicles out of the excess orange juice that you might have out of when it's OTT apple time, you make some the frozen treats and so forth. Channel those into our schools and so forth. It could go a far way in enabling that lifestyle in our children, but also in providing an avenue of revenue to the farmers who oftentimes see a glut in the market and no longer have that revenue later on that they could utilize. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Senator Longmore and Senator Fraser-Baines.
Thank you, Chairman. And I want to start where Senator Longmore stopped, and it's not something I have on my sheet as a point to raise, but I think it's an important point, because one of the things, and you're a businessman in your other life, that a business will look at is the certainty of a return on the investment.
Of course, yes.
And Senator Longmore spoke about the food storage, but I want to go a step further and recall that perhaps, and this is where the government, I believe, comes in, not for regulation, but facilitation. Back in the 70s, there was I was trying to ask totally the AMC, that's the name I was trying to remember. perhaps we
We
could
know,
look
we
at...
know how, we can see how young you are. Senator Fraser, it's very visible.
Admitted it was before my time, but the effect was so profound that even me can recall. But the point I want to make, though, Chairman, is in addition to the cold storage, which Senator Longmore spoke about, the government can also facilitate, because one of the challenges, and Ms. Pullen is here, that farmers will have is a certainty of market. So we're going to encourage them to farm. We're going to encourage the lending institutions, all lending institutions, to lend using crops as collateral. But you want to ensure that at the end of the day, they have a market. And I think the AMC in the 70s played that role. We may, I'm not saying we must have an AMC in 2023, but something akin to that, where you know that your products, your produce will have a market, and then you can go and you can say to them that I have 100 head of yam. There's a guaranteed market of $50 per pound, and they can use that to get the loan, because not speaking for any financial institution, but the financial institution will also need to ensure that there is a return on their investment. So that is something I'm throwing out for policy consideration, not for legislation. Ms. Pullen, I really want to thank you for mentioning the PC. I think you looked over and you saw my notes, because on this sheet of paper I have here, relationship with lending institutions, relationship with PC Bank. And I have it here as a question I wanted to ask you about the relationship of the farmers with the PC Bank. Because back in the days, the farmer that own a piece of land that don't have a title, when financial institutions were not taking it, they could have gone to the PC Bank and they would have used the unregistered land, and they would have gotten their certificate of title, their certificate of compliance under the Facilities for Titles Act, and they could even use that to take to financial institution. So the genesis or the intent of the PC Bank was always to facilitate the farmers within a formal framework, but not as formalistic as the commercial banks, thereby making it easier for farmers to invest, to develop, to expand. So I really wanted to ask you about the relationship with the PC banks, but specifically about whether or not the PC banks have been using the provisions on the SIPO, under the Security Interest in Personal Properties Act. Because I know you gave an example, and I don't know if you can answer it now, and Chairman, perhaps a question to be asked when the PC Bank meets with us. But I want to know to the extent to which the PC banks have been using the provisions on the SIPO to benefit our farmers. Because if the PC banks, which are supposed to be the farmers' bank, that's what I grew up in Brownstone, know it as the farmers' bank. If the PC bank has not been utilizing the provisions on the SIPO, then it means, Chairman, that we have to go back to the drawing board to find out what is the reason for them not using it. And at the same time, I'm also throwing in, again for policy consideration, coming out of what was shared with us by Ms. Pullen, that we may need to reorient the PC banks and how they operate. Because even if the commercial banks are not using it, even if the micro-lending agencies are not using it, SIPO, for the purpose of, the PC banks should be using the provision on the SIPO for the benefit of our farmers. And finally, you mentioned that you have a membership of 183,062 of which are individual members. I see Ms. Leon from the company's office here, and I don't have my notes from that meeting, but I do recall, Chairman, that the company's office shared with us that just over 300 registrations were done, were done within the agricultural sector. And Chairman, I don't know, Ms. Leon, but this is an opportune time for the next meeting with the PC banks. If you could tell us where those are coming from. Are they coming from the PC banks, or are they coming from the micro-lending agencies? I'd be very keen to find out where these 300 registrations or notices are coming from relative to the agricultural sector. Thank you, Chairman.
Member Hilton, thank you very much, Senator Fraser-Benz.
Chairman, simply this. I think today's discussion has been, to my mind, very useful in that it focuses on where I think we're pressing on and insisting as a parliament that these institutions that we set up, that we support in different ways, they have a responsibility to the people of Jamaica. And if we, this parliament, this committee...
And they're not responding.
Yeah, this parliament, I believe we have subpoena powers.
We do, I'm sure you do.
No, I'm very serious.
I don't think we have to get there because the message is going out very clear.
The point I'm making is, for this piece of legislation to work, and we considered it sufficiently important that we brought it in place and put it as a part of the policy solution to our economy. To my mind, there are two areas that this piece of legislation can focus on, and if we're going to make an impact, if it's going to make an impact, the area of agriculture and the creative economy are critical. That because these are the areas in which we have some advantages, and we need to maximize, optimize our competitiveness in these areas. So, the agricultural sector, the PC banks, the other institutions, the bankers, they need to help us with some of the solution. But the last point I wish to make is that it is the ecosystem, and Senator Longmore went over very well. So her intervention caused me to start to think about, and as well, member Fraser-Benz, that again I come back to the ecosystem. And so when I talk about the de-risking is not about government lending, it's about what can government do to create that environment. Because even on a matter of investment, investors, sometimes what all they really need is the appropriate environment in which to take that risk and to make the investment. So we need to do a little bit more, and I think we're headed in the right direction, and I'm pleased that in January, come January, we'll be focused on Chairman, all I'm saying to you is this. If there are particular members that we wish to have, and for whatever reason they are reluctant, then we have tools to ensure that they come and speak to the Parliament about this problem.
Absolutely. And, you know, Member Hilton, what I'm going to do is ask the clerk, once she sent those letters, she must copy me and let me know, because I think it was Senator Fraser-Benz who asked that I should call the head of the Bankers Association, or it was Member Hilton. I will call not just the Bankers Association, everyone will write. I'm going to say, look, I'm chairing this committee, it's the Parliament. Frankly, the Parliament is calling you, and I want you to treat it as an obligation that you should be present. And if I do that as the chairman of this committee, they should understand the gravity to which we train it. Please, Senator Longmore.
Just checking if we specifically, I can't remember, the PC bank.
No, I have said that they will be written along with the DBJ, and they should come together.
Right.
And I'm asking that you inform Ms. Pullen ahead of time, because I'd like her to be back here so that we have the circle completed.
Needs to be here.
We're inviting Radha separately.
Well,
because
financial discussion.
I want to hear Radha's position, though, because Radha is part of the government. If we need to have them back, I can always invite them back at that time as well.
We have an interactive kind of session where the bankers may have concern and Radha can give an input. So, Ms. Pullen, then I think it might be very useful.
In fact, independently though, member, I just asked that we want to have rather, because I'm surprised they're not on the list. So we want to have them, and just like I'm inviting back Ms. Pullen, I'd like to have them. And if they sometimes, because we're going to stack this up a bit because we're running out of time, they might all be here that same day. And in which case we would be better off. Senator Longmore.
Just lastly, because Ms. Pullen is so, I'm so appreciative of her presence and experience.
And we all are involved. She's good.
Yes, and do hope that you're able to come back at the time that is required or being requested. You mentioned that the membership of your association also includes like the Key Club, the 4-H club, etc. Is it possible that you maybe could ask? I would love to hear the youth voice and input in some of this discussion, because I would love to know how we can incentivize our young people more to attract them to this space. And the 4-H club, I was a member of myself and was so benefited from that. However, we might be able to use their input in charting our ways forward. I would appreciate. So if you could perhaps, when you come back, have something that we could relate to from them, I would appreciate that. The youth aspect of agriculture.
And not just the head, who might be a little bit past youth, but maybe a vice president and somebody else down the line who are, representatives from areas that are young people. We want young people in there. Okay? All right. Yes, Senator
Chairman,
Fraser.
I know time is upon us, but if I could just ask Ms. Pullen one question, because I'd mentioned it earlier, but I didn't get an answer, so I'm going to rephrase it. Ms. Pullen, relative to the valuation of crops,
yes,
can you let us know whether or not in your discussion with your members that has become, or that is an issue in seeking loan?
Yeah, what I do know, Minister, is that there is a need for a structured approach to valuation. There is individuals who are out there who, over time, does create the expertise, but it's not as widespread as it should be. And I think that's something that the president of the JAS is in collaboration as we speak with people and our counterpart within the Ministry of Agriculture to find a way to structure a unit that deals with the whole matter of valuation. People will talk about valuation if there's a court case but it must be in such a way that it is an active, used instrument for our members when needed, especially for loans. But at this time, apart from that person, that institution that you'll hear that they'll go to and they'll pay a little bit more, they tend to readily accept a valuation from, let's say, the parish manager or somebody who is in land development or so, but there is no structured unit that one can go to say, let's do a valuation and it's accepted. So that is something that we need to look at.
I'm going to ask you to do us a favor, Mrs. Pullen. You are one of the oldest organizations in Jamaica. Mm-hmm. You have lots of history. Put down on paper to the Joint Select Committee of Parliament what your, meaning the JS, idea of how valuation should work. Okay. And submit it to us, because the truth is many of us who might be responsible for making the policy, the reason why we have these Joint Select Committees to get that kind of information, that you say, look, this is what we have now, it works in this fashion, there are areas where it doesn't work so well, here are our suggestions as to how it can be improved, so that we don't necessarily tear it down, we if we have to tear it down, we tear it down. But we might look at where it works well and where it's not working so well, and what suggestions you would have, given your experiences, to say this is what I would suggest to make it work better. So we'd like to see a submission like that from the JS.
I can guarantee you that we are going to work on it immediately.
Thank you very much.
I'd just like to say one thing.
Yes.
Before. There is the matter of the PC Bank. I go back there because it's really very, very important to rural development.
I agree with that, yes.
When I was growing, every community literally had a PC Bank. And what that offered to the management and the board members was that 90% of the membership were people of the community, and everybody know everybody, and they know where
it was de-risk. In fact, it was a de-risking measure because everybody knows everybody, and they know when the crops come in.
And they know when them plant, and they know everything. So when they go to the bank, there were no great hesitation. Or Mr. Clark would say, no, man, your history too bad, you do this, you do that, because they know. No, the PC banks, you have to search to find a PC bank. And that is what is caused. And the people who are in the PC bank usually don't even live in the community.
They have a clue.
Right? And that is what is causing some of the great issues. I'm not knocking what it is, but I'm saying that if the PC bank is to become effective and to do what its original plan is, we have got to look at where they are, where they were, where they are now, and where we really want them to be. The PC Bank must be an integral part of the community. It must be involved in the development of that community.
It's going to be interesting because DBJ is going to tell you the amount of debt that they have to take on to clear up what is called the PC Bank. Because it's not an untroubled history. But I'm going to bring in Senator Fraser-Binns.
I just want to thank you, and I want to just pick up on a question I asked Ms. Pullen, because I know that each ministry has its own operating procedure, but last week again, forgive me for going back to Jaipur, I was very impressed with the presentation from the CEO, because she spoke about something which has been a discussion within the creative industries for a long time, which is how do you value the creative industries? And just based on where they have come and what she now has to present and working with different financial institutions, I want to recommend, Chairman, that though it is a different area, that perhaps Ms. Pullen and her team could have a sit-down with Jaipur to understand how they started the conversation about seeking a valuation, and then add its own special. You will have to add things that are very unique to the agricultural sector, but I think they would have done some work in terms of how do you value something that is unconventional, and there may be some best practices that we can utilize.
Miss Cohen or Clark will give you the contact details. So Miss Lily-Claire Bellamy, and then you contact her and sit down with her, because I think that's a good step. We need to bring all these, because what is happening at the farmers level is that the whole operation and the security is somewhat much more amorphous than when you get to the higher levels in commercial activity, where it's very clearly defined. Land is drawn and title and all that, but in that level and the small and micro businesses, it's a lot more amorphous. So the Jaipur information, I think, is a good suggestion, and you could contact Ms. Lily-Claire. Senator Longmore, I'm going to bring in.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to recognize Ms. Pullen. The reflection of good work is more work. so we appreciate you.
Well, you notice how because she worked so hard, it was not an issue. She said, yes, it will be here shortly. They're very excited to do it. Member Hilton.
Yes, Chairman, just let me say two things. First of all, I want to join in thanking Ms. Pullen for her presence here today and her presentation, which was very, very helpful, thought-provoking presentation. I want to close by saying this. Firstly, on the PC banks, I am aware, and I think the point you made about the debt and all of that is part of the history.
Yes, yes, yes.
However, I think we have a responsibility now to, and one of the reasons for bringing them here and the DBJ at the same
And
time.
here.
Yeah, at the same time, is to get some learnings to see if we can learn some things about that history, what went wrong. Because they're still, based upon her own testimony, Ms. Pullen's own testimony, and the history, there could still be a compelling reason to relook at and re-engineer the PC banks and their role. That's one. Last point I wish to make, and a request to you as chairman. I think as part of this exercise, before we close out this exercise, I would suggest that this SIPA instrument is a very, very important instrument. We are not the only ones to be utilizing it.
Yes.
We are one of the few developing countries, and first in that line to be seeking to utilize that. I think we can, my suggestion to you is, even before we close out, maybe as a last exercise, is to look to see and talk to one of the World Bank or whoever, which of those countries, expertise, what can we get from them, the learning, the experiences they have had. Maybe different environment, the closer we can to an economy that looks like ours, the better, perhaps more useful. But I think we could close off with an understanding as to how others have addressed some of the challenges with this particular instrument, because I think it's a valid tool. It needs to be adjusted in critical ways. I think this is an opportunity to do so and to benefit even more, because as the registry points out, it has been beneficial in significant ways already. It can be even more so, and we need to see how others have utilized it.
I want to assure you, Member Hilton, that certainly the briefing that I've had from the Minister, from Ms. Allen and her colleagues, we have already touched bases with people, some of who are involved, and we know that very, very few, as you've said, in the Caribbean or developing nations, emerging markets are involved in it at all. But yes, that's part of the work that would eventually end up before we finalize the bill, but will be part of the information that is given to this committee, because you would have to consult, in this case, not just across ministries, but we're looking, because we're forming something, we're creating something, and we are looking elsewhere as it is. And Ms. Allen will take that back to her colleagues for me at the ministry, that yes, what you're doing is good, and we want to make sure that's part of the submission when we come near the end of this exercise. I think we've had a good set of discussions today. It's 4 minutes past midday. Ms. Pullen has really energized our thinking, and I'm glad for the experiences that she shared. Thank you for the work that you do. Clearly, I was sitting here wondering how many people like you they have in the JAS, and how many people like you RADA is trying to steal to come into RADA with all that experience you have on the ground. But that was purely a rhetorical thought, but I've just voiced it in order to say thank you so much for the information and the insights that you brought to us today. And for my committee members, thank you so much. I'm going to ask the clerk to tell me when is our next meeting so I can, do we have a date? All right, she's going to consult with my office to make sure that we set the date properly when I'm present. I want to, and I don't expect to be out in January, so we're going to get it done and come back to you very quickly. Ms. Coyne will get that done for us. But once again, Member Longmore, will you move that we terminate this meeting, and Senator Fraser-Brinz, I'm sure, will.
I so move, Chairman, and let me take the opportunity to wish everyone a happy holidays, because I don't know if we're going to be meeting before then.
I'll say happy Christmas.
Thank you.
And Senator Fraser Binns, you concur. Thank you very much. Happy Christmas, everybody, and thank you all.
Agriculture is an important economic sector, and investing in it may be a wise financial move that gives investors the chance to diversify their portfolios and earn significant returns. So, if you're looking for investment opportunities, why not consider agriculture?
Jamaica has about 200,000 hectares of land that we consider arable, meaning land that we can farm. We only need to farm about 100,000 of that in order to produce sufficiently all the staples that we need, all the protein that we need, all the vegetables and fruits that we need. Of that 200,000 arable land that we have, currently we are only farming about 31,000 hectares that is irrigated. So the provision of reliable irrigation, water, to those acreages is a big challenge. So we have about 15% of our total arable land irrigated. So if we're serious about expanding agricultural output, investments have to be made in agricultural infrastructure, particularly irrigation. So I'm pleased to say today that we have the Essex Valley